partners of sleep talkers or sleepwalkers, what gems have you to share? He farted very loudly and proceeded to say, "You got the wrong guy." My girl woke up one night and said, "Did you find your rocks?" And I asked her what she was talking about, and she said, "I don't know. I'm just trying to make conversation," and promptly went back to sleep. She has no recollection of this. My boyfriend woke me up the other day by gently putting his fingers in my mouth, and I kept moving my head out of the way until eventually I was like, "Can you stop that?" He then sounded genuinely upset and asked why I woke him up as he was having a really nice dream about feeding a deer. Brilliant. Oh my heck. I had something similar happen. I'd gotten up to use the bathroom and our soap is lemon scented. When I had just gotten back to sleep, I woke up to my husband trying to eat my fingers. He said he was dreaming of eating lemon heads. Sigh. My boyfriend either recites postcodes, delivery driver, or calls the dog in his sleep. So either he is mad no one is responding to his postcode nonsense, or I get a flying 30-kilogram dog to my body. I'd like to imagine that he wakes up and calls the dog just to duck with you. My aunt likes to tell the story about her and my cousin sharing a hotel room one time. My aunt woke up having to pee and found my cousin sitting up in bed with her arms folded across her abdomen, kind of rocking back and forth and giggling quietly. When my aunt asked her what she was doing, my cousin said, "I'm holding a baby and it has an adult smile." I found this story deeply unsettling. Not my current partner, but my ex-boyfriend sometimes talks in his sleep, and the funniest story was this one time I was still up reading a book and I hadn't noticed that he was already asleep next to me. Suddenly he bursts out, "Will you just give me the ducking yogurt already, Shannon?" in a flawless British accent, and scares the shit out of me. We are both German and none of our first languages include English. We didn't know a Shannon. He's lactose intolerant. Fantastic sleep songs with lyrics, which are utterly bizarre. My two absolute favorites have been 1, "Oh Whoa Whoa, It's a Corner Cat," 2, "Obey My Rules," "And You'll Always Be a Country Cowboy," repeated about 5 times, and finished with a "YR apostrophe." My wife started screaming one night that she was lost in the local grocery store, and that no matter where she went she couldn't find her way out. I asked her has she tried checking out at the cash registers. She then looked at me and said in her most sincere voice, "That's why you are the smartest person I know," and she rolled over and fell back asleep. So this one time, while my S/O was sleeping, she randomly reaches over and starts to pet my leg softly. When I ask her what she's doing, she looks at me like I'm stupid and says, "What does it look like? I'm petting this fluffy baby penguin." Then pauses for a second, pats my leg again, and blurts out, "Wait, this isn't a penguin." I have never laughed so hard over someone talking in their sleep. One night, my boyfriend woke me up in the middle of the night, tapping me on my shoulder. He put his finger on his mouth, whispered "shush" to me, then pointed at the door and told me I can hear something. Don't move. Predictably, I nearly shit my pants. All the worst possible scenarios crossed my mind, and the moment of silence after he shushed me felt like hours. Then, he started waving his hands and talking about Tetris, the twirlies, IDK, and making sure we don't align. And that's how I learned my boyfriend talks in his sleep. I was watching TV once when my sister came out of her room and shoved her pillow in a kitchen drawer. After that she crossed the living room, opened the front door, and said, "They're almost here." She closed the door and went back to her room. It was my first experience with sleepwalking and scared the complete shit out of me. As far as I'm aware, that is the only incident she has ever had. My grandfather was a hard sleep talker. My grandmother has a funny story. One day my grandfather, while sleeping, was saying, "Do I punch this asshole?" My grandmother replayed, "Yeah, punch him." Then my grandfather in his sleep punched her. I woke up one night when my husband started flailing around in the bed. It shocked me and I shouted, "What's wrong?" Then he punched me in the face. I yelled out and started crying. Then he woke up and shouted, "What's wrong?" He dreamt he was being chased and then turned round and punched them. My mum, who was in her 80s, often falls asleep in her chair while I'm visiting her. She sleep eats. Not real food, but she goes through the motions of holding a plate and bringing food to her mouth. It's hilarious watching her. I asked her once if it was nice, and she said yes, it's very tasty. Edit to thank folks for the awards. Heck yes. Please take a seat. My wife was an avid sleep talker for a long time, and her midnight announcements range from simple single words to elaborate speeches. The ones that really stand out to me are waking up in the middle of the night to her suddenly sitting violently up in bed, throwing back the covers, and screaming, "Tarantula. That will make you very awake. Very quickly," whispering my name repeatedly, which woke me up so she could share in a hushed, cautious voice, "There is an alligator in here." When I expressed my concern, playing along, she told me, still whispering, that it's okay. It has been here before. But my all-time favorite was when, from her perspective as she later explained, she was dreaming that I was playfully sneaking up on her and she saw me and was calling me on it. From my perspective, my wife sat up in the middle of the night, starting into the darkest corner of the room, and said repeatedly in a soft sing-song voice, "I see yow." My flipping blood froze. TLDR, my wife is terrifying. Edit 1. Thanks for the awards. I'm glad this has managed to make some people laugh/cry at work. Once my ex said horse. That's all. Just horse. But with a sense of urgency. The same ex told me I once sat straight up in bed and mumbled, "Jesus, Grandma, you scared the shit out of me." I had been dreaming that I was in bed at night and my grandma, still alive at the time, wandered into the room and stood at the end of the bed with a blank stare. I'm the sleep talker here. Got this from my wife the next morning. Me, sits bolt upright, they're coming. Everything's ready. Wife, sleepily hop. Me, they're coming. Everything's ready. Wife, they're coming. Me, MMMHMM. Wife, but everything's ready. Me. Yes, wife. Sounds like we're okay then. Me, comically flops back down and instantly goes back to sleep. Edit, formatting. I really like the flow of this conversation, and I know that this is completely unrelated, but the reason it stands out to me is because this is exactly how you're supposed to respond to someone who's delusional or someone who has Alzheimer's or dementia. There's no reason to challenge what they say, or to make them explain themselves, or to say they're wrong. Just say something calming to reassure them, but everything's ready. Sounds like we're okay then. If you were speaking to someone with severe delusions or advanced aging issues, this would be textbook and beautifully done. Edit. Since people are noticing this, I thought I would add that, after giving it some thought, you don't have to be extremely delusional for this flow of conversation to work well and be very helpful. I experience mild delusion when my mania increases to psychosis. I have bipolar 2. When it's at its absolute worst, I might have a thought like, "Oh, it's a beautiful day outside today. It must have been because of that song I listened to earlier." And mildly assuming my taste in music has directed the weather for the day. If I made a comment about that out loud and someone said to me, "That's impossible and you're delusional," it would make me feel highly embarrassed and also make me question reality for a moment, which is extremely uncomfortable and unsettling and completely unnecessary unless I'm about to do something stupid. I used to sit long hours with at-risk, mostly dementia and schizophrenia, patients in a hospital. As per my job duties, what you say is totally true, because confrontation leads to agitation. I remember one sweet older woman I sat with, who had schizophrenia. I'm not sure, and she would say some random things. I'd respond with pretty random but thematic things. She'd move the theme a bit, and say more random stuff on that new-ish theme. I'd do the same. She'd raise a drawing of Snoopy in the air. I'd exclaim, "Snoopy." We'd repeat. Working with an older man with dementia, who used to be an English teacher, we would give him papers to grade and blankets to fold. When he was done folding a blanket, he'd move on to another, and I'd just mess up that blanket again and ask him to fold it when he was done with the other one. It seems mean, but it isn't. Compassion takes on a lot of forms, and some of those forms don't even resemble compassion. But that's exactly what they are. If that man runs out of blankets to fold, or papers to grade, you know what he does next? He attempts to break out of his hospital room go out the nearest exit, and combat anyone who tries to stop him. My wife was mumbling a lot and suddenly shouted donkey kick as she kicked me in my shin. So that was fun. My wife was in her finals week, so she woke up in the middle of the night telling me she discovered a way to study while sleeping. So I asked her how, and she closed her eyes and went back to sleep. Shh. Presumably not wrong, lol. Years ago, my wife was mumbling in her sleep and seemed a bit upset. I wanted to comfort her without waking her up too much, so I said, "Honey, you're fine. Do you know where you are?" She slugged me in the arm and said I'm in place where punch buggies are seen first. She then rolled over and muttered to herself, "Chugga chugga chugga buggy," and went back to sleep. She didn't remember a thing the next morning. My mom sleepwalks sometimes. When she was in the middle of her residency, she came into my room in the middle of the night and sharply asked, "Did you give patient her dose of medication like I asked you to 15 minutes ago?" I groggily replied, "Who? Wah?" She just huffed and said, "Well, I guess that answers my question," before turning around and leaving. Without closing the door, of course. She didn't remember a thing about it the next morning. He got up, went into the kitchen, and ate one bite of a mini pecan pie. No fork. Just a straight bite. Then apparently remembered he hates pecan pie and left it stacked neatly on the little box. Another time he sat up and stared straight ahead at the wall. Didn't respond to me asking what was wrong. He stood up, walked into the wall, then stood there like he was contemplating the barrier. He just backed up exactly as he came, sat down and swung back into bed like nothing happened. That was creepy. Napping with the boyfriend. A loud noise wakes me, but has still out me. What was that? Him, either a tree or a magic eraser. I've been told that, as a child, my father would regularly sleepwalk into his dad's bedroom and urinate in his work shoes. I once did that to my sister as a kid. I slept in a different place than I normally was. When she woke up, because of what I was doing, she found me in her closet, pissing on her shoes. She yelled my name, and for me to stop, I yelled back something like, "Shut up, get out of here." She then yelled that I was in her closet, pissing on her expensive shoes. I finally came to and freaked out, clamped it off, and ran to the bathroom. Icing on the cake, her then BF, now husband, said she could probably just rinse them out. I apparently filled both shoes. There was no rinsing. This story gets brought up at every family gathering. I have had funnier experiences than this one, but cannot remember exactly what was said. Most recently, though, my boyfriend scoots over to me to big spoon/little spoon, and I snuggle in, thinking that's all it was. Then he gets real close to my ear and whispers, "Just so you know, there's something in the closet, like a cartoon turtle." I did my best not to bust out laughing and just said, "Okay honey." When he woke up, he had no memory of it whatsoever, of course. My girlfriend once yelled in her sleep, "No no no, you spunky lesbian, do still tease her about it." My brother did that in the middle of the night. He would get up, go into the living room, say some nonsense shit to our parents, and go back to bed. It was actually pretty creepy the first times, because he was like, "They are in the walls. They are." When I was a child about 5 years old, I was sleeping in my parents' bed for some reason, probably a storm. Mom was awake. Dad and I were asleep. Suddenly my father and I have this cross-sleep conversation, while my mom lays between us, quietly freaked out. "Dad, you better not take my toys." I mutter angrily, "Okay, I won't." My father responds, "Don't even touch them." Okay, not particularly scintillating conversation, but notable for the fact that we're both asleep and still responding to each other. It was like making Alexa and Siri talk to each other, lol. Like this video and this good boy will be your mailman forever. We are Redditation, and we redditate every day. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a wonderful day you magnificent people.